Ken stood outside Aunt Renee's mansion, the bass from inside thumping through the pavement like it was laughing at him. He checked his name on the guest list again. Blank. The guard gave him that polite half-smile people wear when they think you don't belong. He could see the glow of Malik's party lights spilling out through the tall windows. His brother's laughter. Loud, sharp, familiar, cut through the air like it used to when they were kids fighting over who got the bigger slice of cake. Only now, the joke was on him. He straightened his collar, watching luxury cars pull up, every door opening to someone who used to ignore his calls. He'd built empires out of rejection. Tonight wasn't gonna break him. It was just gonna remind him who he became. And when he finally stepped into that world again, they'd know his name wasn't left off the list. It was written above it. Ken walked back to his car, that quiet anger burning behind his ribs. He could still hear Malik's voice through the glass, smooth, confident, like nothing had ever gone wrong between them. That voice used to motivate him. Now it haunted him. He thought about all the times he carried Malik's dreams while his own were laughed at. Thought about how he spent nights designing events for strangers, while his own family didn't invite him to a table. But even in the sting, there was calm. He'd learned silence was power, and if they wanted a show, he'd give them one. The kind I'd talk about long after the lights faded. Inside, Malik raised his glass to a room full of people who only came for the open bar and clout. To family, he said, eyes scanning faces, stopping for half a second at Tasha, who looked down fast. He pretended not to notice. DeAndre slapped his back, laughing. The DJ switched tracks. Heavy bass glitter lights spinning across the ceiling. Malik's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was winning tonight, but somewhere deep inside, he knew who he'd lost already. Outside again, Ken leaned against his car, phone glowing in his hand. He scrolled through his contacts, stopped, and tapped the name. Derek. Aviation. It wasn't pride anymore. It was message. Yeah, he said, voice low, calm, measured. You still got that chopper on standby? The pause on the line was short. I want it in the air in 30. He hung up, the corner of his mouth twitching into the first real smile of the night. The rain stopped as if the night itself wanted to watch what came next. From inside, Malik's party kept roaring, bass shaking the windows. But outside, silence gathered around Ken, like armor. He looked up one more time at the mansion, his family laughing, toasting, forgetting him. All right, he whispered, pulling his blazer straight. Let's turn this into history. He stepped into his car, engine humming like a promise. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about a rival. 2 years earlier, the Matthews brothers were still thick as thieves. Back when dreams still smelled like sweat and late-night takeout. Ken had the designs, Malik had the mouthpiece. Together, they ran a small event startup out of Malik's garage. But money started to shift the air between them. Malik loved the flash. Ken wanted legacy. One night, while they were setting up for a mayor's gala pitch, Malik changed the deck. Removed Ken's name. Ken didn't notice until he stood beside him at the presentation and heard Malik say, I came up with this concept last year. That sentence sliced deep. Ken smiled through it, but something inside him went silent. The night before the pitch, Ken stayed up sketching stage layouts. Every line on that paper meant something to him. Proof he was building something real. When Malik finally came in, smelling like cigars and ego, he tossed a folder on the table. We're good, he said. Ken smiled, too tired to double-check. He didn't know his brother had just erased him. At the mayor's gala presentation, Malik was magnetic. His words rolled like silk, his smile bright enough to hide every lie. Ken stood behind him, nodding, holding up visuals, realizing his name wasn't on the slide. His chest tightened, but he didn't move. Pride whispered to stay silent. Betrayal screamed to walk out. In that moment, he learned that silence sometimes costs more than words ever could. After the meeting, Ken waited until the hallway emptied. Malik strutted out, grinning like a man who just sealed his future. "We did it?" he said. Ken nodded, the words heavy in his throat. "Yeah, we did." But as Malik walked off, his phone buzzed. Ken saw the message flash across the screen. "Congrats, Malik. Can't wait to see your designs live." That's when he knew. He wasn't just left out of credit. He'd been replaced by his own brother's ambition. That night, Ken packed his things from the garage. Posters, sketches, coffee mugs, all reminders of a dream they once shared. The air smelled of gasoline and lost trust. He didn't argue. Didn't beg, just left a note on the workbench that read, "Keep the name. I'll build my own." When he closed the door, thunder rolled outside. It was the kind of sound that told you a man had just been reborn. Ken didn't start with a miracle. He started with nothing but a busted laptop and a prayer. The first months were rough, sleeping on couches, hustling small gigs, designing baby showers and pop-up shops just to eat. Every "no" he heard only sharpened his focus. He'd sketch layouts in laundromats, draft invoices on cracked screens, and study luxury events like gospel. Tasha was there through it all, whispering, "They can't ignore what's divine." He believed her. One design post went viral. A rooftop wedding dripping in gold and sunset light. From there, the calls never stopped, but even with success knocking, the ghost of betrayal kept him grinding like he still had something to prove. When that first big check hit, Ken didn't celebrate. He reinvested. New cameras, new team, new vision. He started shooting every event like a movie, every table like a scene. Word spread fast. "That's the dude who turned a church basement into the Met Gala." He called his company Skyline Moments, and every time a client smiled, he saw another brick being laid over the hole his brother left. Success came fast, too fast. News outlets started calling. Celebrities reposted his designs. His face hit magazines Malik once dreamed of being in. But behind every smile was a question. "What happens when Malik sees?" Tasha warned him. "He'll reach out when he feels you rising." Ken laughed it off, but deep down he knew. Blood always circles back when the block starts talking. Then came the call. Malik's voice, smooth but shaky, came through like static. "Proud of you, little bro," he said. Ken froze mid-step. He'd dreamed of that sentence once. Now it sounded hollow. "Malik wanted help planning a surprise party," said he. "Needed the best in the city." Ken kept his tone cool. "I'll check my schedule." When he hung up, Tasha looked at him, silent. They both knew. This wasn't a job. It was a test. The day the contract came through, Ken didn't hesitate. He accepted. Not for revenge, for clarity. If Malik wanted the city watching, then Ken would give them a night they'd never forget. He poured everything into that event. Design, detail, fire. Every light fixture, every pedal placement was perfection. What Malik didn't know, Ken had already written the story's ending. The night glittered like sin. Malik's surprise party had the kind of shine money buys but soul can't hold. Guests flooded Aunt Renee's mansion in sequins and suits. Cameras flashing, laughter floating thick with champagne. But no one knew the event design. The lights, the theme, the entire look was Ken's work. He'd handled it anonymously through his company. When Malik walked in and saw the gold and black luxury theme, he grinned wide, thinking it reflected his greatness. But the irony burned through every bulb. His brother had built the room that worshipped him. Ken arrived late, dressed like silence in motion, black on black, stepping through the front doors without a word. The DJ didn't even notice. The music swallowed his entrance, but Tasha did. Her eyes followed him across the room, heart in her throat. Malik was surrounded by friends, toasting himself under flashing lights. When he finally looked up and saw Ken, the smile slipped. Time froze, and for one breath, the party lost its sound. Malik approached slowly, the crowd parting like they could feel the history between them. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, voice half-joking but eyes defensive. Ken smirked. "You invited the best, didn't you?" The words hung heavy. Malik forced a laugh, clinking his glass. "This? Just a little something I threw together." Ken's gaze swept the room, landing on the golden centerpiece I'd designed. "Yeah," he said softly. "I can tell." The air between them was no longer blood. It was glass, ready to shatter. Tasha stepped between them before words turned into wounds. "Not here," she whispered. But the brothers' silence said more than arguments ever could. Aunt Renee noticed the chill and quickly called for another toast, her voice trembling as she tried to pull attention away. The DJ raised the volume, drowning the discomfort. But under the music, Malik muttered, "Still chasing my light, huh?" Ken leaned close enough for only him to hear. "I built it." Then he turned away, leaving Malik standing under his own spotlight that suddenly felt too bright. As the night dragged on, Malik tried to shake off the moment, drowning pride in liquor and noise. But every light flicker reminded him of Ken's touch. Guests kept praising the design. "Man, this is genius." And each compliment chipped at him. Meanwhile, Ken slipped out quietly to the balcony, looking over the city that once ignored him. He pulled out his phone, texted one word: "Now." Far above the skyline, a distant hum began to grow, slow, steady, powerful. The night was about to remember his name. The party reached its peak, lights flashing, laughter high, glasses clinking, but under all that noise, something darker started to hum. Ken leaned on the balcony railing, phone still warm in his palm. He wasn't angry anymore, just done pretending. Inside, Malik was performing for the crowd like always, every laugh louder than the last. Every glance toward Ken quicker, sharper. But the mask was slipping. The crowd didn't see it. Tasha did. She saw the fear behind Malik's grin, the panic of a man watching his reflection crack. Tasha couldn't take it anymore. She slipped out to the balcony, closing the door behind her. "Ken," she said softly, "he didn't just erase your name. He sold your designs, the same ones that got you started." Ken didn't look surprised, just tired. "I figured," he said. "Why you think I stopped needing an apology?" Tasha's voice broke. "You were supposed to fight him, not disappear." Ken turned then, eyes glinting under city light. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. Back inside, Malik's speech stumbled. He started thanking people who weren't even there, voice slurred by pride and liquor. Aunt Renee clapped nervously, whispering prayers under her breath. Then Deandre, ever the stirrer, shouted, "Tell him who designed this, bro!" Malik froze. His eyes darted toward the balcony, where Ken stood framed in moonlight. The silence hit harder than any music. Ken didn't move. He just opened the door and stepped back inside, slow, controlled. Every eye in the room followed him. "You want to tell him?" he said quietly. Well, no words came. The crowd murmured. Ken's voice stayed even. "You told the city you built this empire. Funny thing is, every time they saw your shine, they were looking at my reflection." The DJ turned down the volume. You could hear Malik's breath shake. For the first time, he looked small. "Oh well, what do you feel like, sorry?" For the first time, he looked small. Aunt Renee stepped forward, eyes glistening. "Boys," she said softly, "this ain't the place." But the truth had already escaped. Malik dropped his glass, shards scattering across the marble floor like the sound of his pride breaking. Ken didn't flinch. I'm not here for revenge, he said, just to return what was stolen. And then, right on cue, the faint hum in the distance grew louder. Steady, rhythmic, powerful. Guests looked up through the skylight as the lights began to shake. Malik's confusion turned to awe. The night had just changed its sky. The sound started like thunder, but sharper, closer. Guests poured onto the balcony and front lawn, hands shielding their eyes from the growing wind. Malik stumbled outside, confusion turning to disbelief. A helicopter hovered low above the mansion, blades slicing through the night. The spotlight swept the crowd, stopped, and locked on Ken. Every whisper died. He looked up, the same man they left standing outside, now returning from the sky. Ken didn't speak. The noise did all the talking. He stepped forward, wind pushing against him like resistance he'd already beaten 1,000 times. The helicopter's light followed him as if honoring him, not showing off. Aunt Renee clutched her pearls, tears in her eyes. Malik's voice broke through the chaos. "You trying to embarrass me?" Ken turned slightly, calm even through the roar. "Nah," he said, "just reminding you who built the stage you standing on." The helicopter pilot's voice came through loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the visionary himself, Kendrick Matthews." Gasps spread like wildfire. Malik's face fell. He bragged about every inch of this event. Every chandelier, every detail. And now the truth thundered from the sky. Cameras flashed. Social media went crazy. Ken didn't need to say a word. His silence had become scripture. Malik shouted over the wind, desperate now. "You had to make it about you, huh? You couldn't let me have one night." Ken's expression didn't change. "This was your night," he said evenly. "You just invited the truth." The helicopter began to rise higher, blades roaring like applause. Ken looked up, eyes glinting against the light. For once, he didn't feel small under it. He owned it. The wind softened as the helicopter lifted into the night sky, its sound fading into something almost peaceful. Ken's phone buzzed, his company's page exploding with mentions. Aunt Renee walked up to him, eyes full of pride and pain. "You didn't have to go this far, baby." Ken smiled gently. "Sometimes you gotta land where they said you'd never fly." The crowd erupted in cheers, phones still flashing. Malik turned away, but the truth stayed with him. Ken didn't chase applause. He just let the world see what they tried to hide. The next morning, Atlanta felt softer. No cameras, no noise, just sunrise spilling gold across the skyline. Ken sat on his penthouse balcony, coffee untouched, scrolling through endless messages and tags. The world finally saw him. But the victory didn't feel loud. It felt quiet, almost heavy. His phone rang again, Malik's name flashing. He let it ring twice before answering. The voice on the other end was different, stripped of pride. "You won," Malik said. Ken took a breath. "Nah, bro. I just showed up." Malik stood alone in the same mansion that once overflowed with laughter. The aftermath was raw. Empty glasses, confetti stuck to marble, and silence thicker than regret. He looked at his reflection in the broken shards of a champagne glass, the same ones from last night. "What did I even win?" he whispered. Aunt Renee walked in, her voice soft but sharp. "Pride don't keep you warm, baby." "Family does." "Nor and Hupstor, Nimshernastic right in me. In more shorts and your." Later that afternoon, Ken met Tasha at Piedmont Park. The air smelled like cut grass and peace. She leaned against a tree, smiling at him like she'd known the ending all along. "So," she said, "what now?" Ken looked out over the pond where kids threw bread to ducks. "Now I rest," he said. "Let the noise talk for me." She slipped her hand into his. For the first time in years, his heartbeat matched the moment. That evening, Malik showed up at Ken's building. No entourage, no fake grin, just him. They stood in the lobby, quiet for a long time. Malik finally said, "I was jealous. You kept building while I was pretending. Cannot. We both built something, bro. Yours just cracked first." Malik exhaled, shoulders sinking like a man releasing years of weight. They didn't hug. They just stood there. Two men finally speaking the same language. Truth. That night, the city lights shimmered like applause from the heavens. Ken stood by his window watching helicopters cross the skyline. Not as symbols now, but as reminders. He smiled faintly, whispering to himself, "They'll always look up. Down below." Malik's car pulled away slowly. Different roads, same sky. And somewhere in that quiet, the sound of peace finally landed.